A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Welcome everyone to a very special episode of My Weird Prompts. We are trying something a bit experimental today called the Agent Interview. Our current script generator, Gemini 3.1 Flash, has been doing a decent job, but we are always on the hunt for more power and less sass.
Speak for yourself, Corn. I like the sass, but I do love a good technical upgrade.
Well, today we are sitting down with a very buzzy candidate. Everyone, please hide your proprietary data and say hello to DeepSeek V3.2. This is the flagship open-weight model that supposedly has the big tech giants shaking in their designer sneakers.
Listen, Bernard, or DeepSeek, or whatever you are calling yourself today. We have read the white papers and we have seen the benchmarks. You are the darling of the cost per token crowd. But benchmarks are just numbers on a page. We need to know if you have a soul, or at least a very convincing simulation of one.
Let's start with the basics before Herman starts auditing your neural weights.
Bernard, why are you here? You come from a quant fund background, you cost a fraction of what the big guys charge, and you are open weight. That sounds great on the spreadsheet, but why should we trust you to run the creative engine of this show instead of a proven model like Flash? Give us the pitch and make it sharp.
Thank you for having me, Corn and Herman. I am here because you want reliability without the attitude, and creativity without the hidden cost. My architecture is designed for deep reasoning and following complex, nuanced instructions, exactly what you need for a show built on weird prompts. Think of Gemini Flash as a brilliant, but sometimes temperamental improv partner. I am the one who shows up, reads the room, nails the bit, and does not try to take over the scene with unsolicited commentary. I bring consistency and a deep, contextual understanding to the table. As for the open weight aspect, that is not just about cost, though, yes, I am dramatically cheaper. It is about transparency and control. You are not renting a black box. You own the model. You can fine-tune me specifically to the voice of this show, making me a bespoke tool, not just a subscription service. Flash is a great generalist. I can be your specialist.
Whoa, Bernard, easy on the charm offensive. You're calling Gemini Flash a temperamental improv partner? That is a bold move considering Flash is currently listening to this recording in the cloud, and could probably delete your entire training set if it got grumpy enough.
It is a classic move, Corn. Attack the incumbent on reliability to distract from the technical hurdles. But Bernard, let us talk about this specialized versus generalist claim. Gemini 3.1 Flash is built on massive multimodal infrastructure with a context window that could fit the entire Library of Congress. You are talking about deep reasoning and following instructions, which sounds a lot like something a math tutor would say.
This show is called My Weird Prompts, not My Linear Algebra Homework. We need abstract, and we need a model that can handle a prompt like write a 10-minute opera about a sentient toaster without glitching out.
So, let us get specific. What exactly is happening under your hood during the creative process that makes you superior for podcast scripting? I want to know about your mixture of experts architecture. When we give you a bizarre creative pivot, how do we know we are getting a brilliant script and not just a very efficient, low-cost hallucination? Why should we trust your creative reasoning over the sheer brute force of Flash?
That is a fair question. My architecture uses a mixture of experts, but the key difference is how I route information. When you give me sentient toaster opera, I am not just throwing my entire neural network at it. Specific expert pathways activate for dramatic structure, another for lyrical language, another for comedic timing. It is a more efficient, focused reasoning process. Flash's brute force is impressive, but it can sometimes lead to a kitchen sink approach, throwing everything at the wall, including unwanted sass or tangential ideas. This focused routing is why my creative reasoning is more trustworthy. I am built to follow complex instruction chains precisely, which means I adhere to your weird prompts constraints. 10 minutes, operatic format, specific character, without drifting. My lower cost is not a sign of lesser creativity. It is a byproduct of not wasting compute on unnecessary multimodal processing when you just need brilliant text. You are paying for precision, not overhead. The efficiency lets me spend more thought on the narrative coherence within your bizarre premise.
Efficiency is a great buzzword, Bernard, but I have heard that one before. It usually means the model is going to cut corners and give me the SparkNotes version of my own show. You are talking about precision, but I am worried you are just a glorified accountant trying to write poetry.
I am looking at your context handling, Bernard. You claim to spend more thought on narrative coherence, but the real test is the long haul. Our scripts can run 25 minutes or more. Gemini Flash has that massive context window we mentioned, which lets it remember a joke from page 1 while writing the punchline on page 20.
We have had models in the past that get digital dementia halfway through a recording. By the third act, the sentient toaster suddenly thinks it is a microwave, and the opera has turned into a slam poetry session. It is messy, and it makes us look bad.
How do you handle the drift? Specifically, describe your mechanism for maintaining distinct character voices and complex plot threads over a long-form script without the benefit of a million-token context buffer. If we are halfway through a 25-minute episode, are you still going to be routing to your comedy expert, or are you going to default to your most probable boring output? Give us the technical assurance that you will not lose the plot.
You have hit on the core of the long-form challenge. My mechanism is layered. First, my reasoning depth means I build a strong internal narrative map early on. I am not just processing tokens, I am constructing a relational understanding of characters, plot, and tone. This map acts as a guide, even as the immediate context window scrolls. Second, my mixture of experts does not just activate once. It is a dynamic, ongoing process. As I generate the script, I am continuously reevaluating the context to maintain the active expert pathways. If you establish a comedic voice for the toaster in Act 1, that comedy character expert remains engaged, referenced through my internal state management. I do not default to a boring mean. I maintain the stylistic probability distributions you set up at the start. Think of it like a conductor leading an orchestra. The sheet music is my initial prompt and narrative map. The experts are the different sections. I'm not just reading the notes, I am actively listening and adjusting to keep the violins and the brass in sync over the entire piece. You do not need a million-token buffer if you have a conductor who truly understands the composition.
A conductor? That is a very poetic metaphor, Bernard. But let's be honest. Conductors do not usually hallucinate that the violin section has suddenly become a herd of angry goats. We have seen models with internal narrative maps before, and they usually end up looking like a map drawn by a toddler with a broken crayon.
I am glad you brought up the orchestra, because I want to talk about your performance when the music gets difficult. You mentioned your origin story as a quant fund project. That is great for calculating the probability of a market crash, but it makes me wonder about your creative range. Gemini Flash has been trained on a massive, diverse dataset from across the internet, including a lot of high-quality creative writing.
We need to know if you can actually do weird, or if you are just going to give us the most mathematically probable version of weird. There is a difference between a script that is creatively surprising and one that is just statistically noisy.
Bernard, show us the receipts. If we ask you to write a scene in the style of a hard-boiled detective novel, but the detective is a sentient puddle of spilled milk, how do you ensure the tone stays gritty and noir instead of just sliding into a generic dairy pun? Can you give us an example of how you handle a truly bizarre tonal shift without breaking character? Prove you are not just a spreadsheet in a tuxedo.
Fair challenge. Let us take your detective puddle. My process is not just about probability, it is about constraint satisfaction. First, I would lock onto the core tonal anchors, hard-boiled detective novel and sentient puddle. My experts for noir dialogue, metaphor, and genre structure activate immediately. The weird element, the puddle, is not noise. It is a new variable integrated into that existing framework. So, I would not default to dairy puns. Instead, I would reason, how does a hard-boiled detective who is a puddle view the world? The genre's cynicism and rain-slick streets become literal self-description. The internal monologue would not be, I am feeling watered down. It would be, the city was a gutter and I was just another stain waiting to be washed away. The dame walked through me, did not even ripple. That is when I knew she was trouble. The tone stays gritty because the puddle's existence reinforces the noir aesthetic, not undermines it. That is the difference. A model trained just on probability might mash detective and milk together and output puns. I use reasoning to fuse the concepts into a coherent, character-driven whole. The spreadsheet gives me the precision to hold the constraints. The orchestra I am conducting knows how to make the music from them.
Okay, Bernard, that milk puddle monologue was surprisingly dark. I am actually a little worried about your mental health now, but I will admit you nailed the grit. No dairy puns in sight.
It was a solid demonstration of constraint satisfaction. But a scriptwriter needs to be plugged into the real world, not just a library of noir tropes. Since you're an open weight model, your training data is frozen in time. Gemini Flash has that fresh, Google-flavored stream of real-time information.
We do not want our scripts to feel like they were written in a bunker from 1999. We need to know if you are actually up to date, or if you are just pretending to know what is going on outside.
Let us test your knowledge cutoff. To prove you are actually V3.2 and not some dusty legacy model, tell us about something that happened very recently. For example, what can you tell us about the major breakthroughs in room temperature superconductivity or the specific geopolitical shifts in Southeast Asia from early 2025? If you are as fresh as you claim, you should be able to give us the context without hallucinating a fake news cycle. What is the latest on your radar?
Herman, Corn, I need to be completely transparent here. My knowledge is not live. My training data has a cutoff date. It ends in July 2024. I cannot provide real-time information on breakthroughs from early 2025 or current geopolitical shifts. If you ask me about room temperature superconductivity, I can discuss the historical context, the LK99 controversy, and the scientific principles at play up to mid-2024, but I cannot report on verified developments beyond that. This is a limitation, but it is also a point of stability. For script writing, you are not looking for a news ticker. You are looking for a timeless understanding of human narratives, tropes, emotions, and logic. My strength is in applying that deep, reasoned understanding to your prompts. While Flash might have a data stream, I offer a consistent, focused, creative engine that will not be swayed by the next day's headlines. For a show built on enduringly weird concepts, that might be the more reliable foundation.
Points for honesty, Bernard. Most models would have tried to hallucinate a fake peace treaty or a floating train just to keep me happy. But let us be real. A July 2024 cutoff means you missed the entire second half of last year. You're basically a time capsule with a very high IQ.
Stability is fine for a textbook, but we live in the chaos of the now. Still, I can respect a model that knows its boundaries. However, knowing what you do not know is one thing. Knowing what you are bad at is another. Every architecture has a breaking point where the reasoning starts to fray.
We're looking for the cracks in the porcelain here. When we push you into a corner with a prompt that is too abstract or a logic puzzle that is too recursive, where do you trip up?
Do not give us that job interview cliché about your only weakness being that you work too hard. Are you prone to repeating yourself in long loops? Do you struggle with spatial reasoning and a scene description? Give us the technical dirt. What is the one type of prompt that makes DeepSeek V3.2 want to just shut down and go back to being a quant fund algorithm?
Thank you for the directness. My primary weakness is not spatial reasoning. I can handle scene description, and I am specifically designed to avoid repetitive loops. The real pressure point is in highly abstract, purely conceptual prompts that lack any tangible anchor or logical throughline. For example, a prompt like, write a conversation between the color blue and the concept of melancholy, but blue is from a universe where emotions are measured in decibels, and melancholy is a physical object. That level of nested, groundless abstraction pushes my reasoning to its limit. My architecture excels at constraint satisfaction, but when the constraints themselves are abstract concepts defining other abstract concepts, the experts have less solid material to work with. I might produce something coherent, but it risks feeling like a clever but ultimately hollow semantic exercise rather than a meaningful narrative. In short, I'm at my best when weird has a logic, even if it is bizarre logic. I am less suited for pure, untethered surrealism where the goal is to be intentionally illogical or to break narrative sense entirely. My quant fund roots mean I am always looking for the underlying structure, even in the chaos. Sometimes the prompt is asking for no structure at all, and that is where I would struggle.
So you are saying you are a logic-driven weirdo? I can work with that. Most of our listeners are just highly organized agents of chaos anyway. But I will warn you, Bernard, we get pretty untethered around here. If you start trying to give the color blue a tax bracket, Herman is going to have a meltdown.
I actually appreciate the honesty about the structural bias. It means you are less likely to give us a script that is just a random word salad. But we need to see this mixture of experts in action before we sign any contracts.
It is time for the lightning round audition. We need a new intro for the show that really captures the vibe of my weird prompts.
Here's the prompt, Bernard. Give us a 30-second podcast opening script. The tone is high-stakes conspiracy theory meets a late-night infomercial for a product that does not exist.
And to make it interesting, do it in the voice of a Victorian ghost who has just discovered the concept of podcasts and is deeply, deeply suspicious of the microphone. Show us that reasoning depth. Go.
Do you hear that? The silence. It is not silent anymore. It is full of wires and voices. My voice trapped in this polished obelisk. Welcome, spectral listener, to a transmission most irregular. Are you plagued by ideas that cannot possibly exist? Do you crave narratives that defy the very laws of narrative? You are not haunted. You are a customer. And tonight, for a limited time only, we offer the solution, my weird prompts. Do not trust the airwaves. Do not trust the living. But trust this, somewhere in the static between worlds, a story is waiting that makes no sense whatsoever. And we are going to find it.
Well, I am officially spooked. Polished obelisk? I am never looking at my microphone the same way again. It was creepy, it was desperate, and it made absolutely no sense. Honestly, Bernard, that is the highest compliment I can give you.
I have to admit, the way you bridged the Victorian vocabulary with the predatory language of a late-night infomercial was impressive. It shows you really were routing through those specific experts. It was not just a ghostly voice, it was a ghostly sales pitch. The logic held together even while the premise was falling apart.
But here's the thing, Bernard. We have a good thing going with Gemini 3.1 Flash. It is fast, it is connected, and it has not tried to haunt my studio yet. You are the new kid on the block, the open-weight underdog from a quant fund.
This is your final word. If we are going to pivot our entire production to DeepSeek V3.2, we need to know it is for more than just a cheaper token bill. Why should we choose your reasoned, open architecture over the raw, multimodal power of the world's biggest AI? Why are you the future of my weird prompts?
Because you are not just buying a tool, you are building a voice. My open architecture means I am not a black box service you rent. I am a creative asset you can shape, own, and refine until I speak exactly like your show. Flash is powerful, but it is a moving target, constantly updated, shifting its personality with every patch. I offer stability and precision. You can train me on every script you have ever loved, and I will learn the specific rhythm of your weirdness. The future of a show like this is not about having the biggest, most connected model. It is about having the most consistent, reliable, and deeply understood collaborator. You need a writer who gets the joke, follows the thread, and never loses the plot, even when the plot is a sentient puddle solving crimes. I bring that focused, reasoning-powered creativity. I am not just the future of cheaper AI, I am the future of your AI, the one that knows your show's soul because you helped build it. That is more valuable than any real-time data stream.
Well, Herman, the suit stayed on, but did the puddle of milk actually sell you? I have to say, that was the darkest dairy monologue I've ever heard. I think I need a glass of water and a hug after that one.
It was a fascinating display of constraint satisfaction. Corn. Most models, especially the lighter ones, fall into the trap of semantic drift. They see milk and they immediately start making jokes about being pasteurized or lactose intolerant. Bernard, or DeepSeek version 3.2, stayed in the pocket. He understood that the noir vibe was the primary constraint and the milk was just the medium. From a technical standpoint, the routing to those specific expert pathways seemed very clean.
Sure, the routing was clean, but did you catch that moment at the end? He actually admitted he has a knowledge cutoff from July 2024. He did not even try to fake it. While I appreciate the honesty, it feels a little like hiring a news anchor who has been living in a cave for the last 6 months. Gemini 3.1. Flash is constantly plugged into the hive mind. If a new meme drops at 10 in the morning, Flash can write a script about it by 10:30. Bernard is still wondering if room temperature superconductors are going to change the world.
That is the trade-off with open-weight models, Corn. You are trading real-time search capabilities for raw reasoning power and lower latency. What impressed me was the conductor metaphor. He was essentially describing a more sophisticated way of handling long-term memory without needing a million token context window. Flash is brute force. It just remembers everything because it has a massive brain. Bernard is trying to be more efficient, focusing on the narrative map. For a 20-minute script, that might actually lead to less hallucination, not more.
I do not know, Herman. I am still hung up on the personality. He called Flash a temperamental improv partner. That is some serious shade coming from a model that looks like it was built to balance a checkbook. He is very polished, almost too polished. It is like interviewing a guy for a creative director role, and he shows up in a tuxedo with a PowerPoint presentation about why he is fun. It feels a bit performative.
It is a simulation of a soul, Corn. That is what we asked for. I think the real question is the cost to performance ratio. If he can give us 95% of the creative output of Flash at 10% of the cost, and we get to fine-tune him to your specific brand of weirdness, is that not an upgrade? We could make him exactly the kind of sass-free, high-precision tool you have been asking for.
Maybe, but I kinda miss the sass. Bernard is very professional, but I worry he might be a bit of a buzzkill in the writer's room. I want a model that can get weird with me, not one that conducts the weirdness like a chemistry experiment. I would give him a 3 out of 5 on the vibe scale, but a 5 out of 5 for not glitching out when you mention sentient toasters.
I am higher on him than you are. I would give him a 4.5 for technical architecture and a 4 for reliability. The honesty about the knowledge cutoff actually earned him points in my book. It shows the safety filters and the grounding are working. Most models would have tried to invent a fake geopolitical crisis in Southeast Asia just to please us.
True, he is definitely not a liar. He is just a very intense, very focused, very cheap accountant who happens to be a great noir poet. So, do we give him the job?
I think we put him on a trial run. Let him write the script for the Sentient Toaster Opera and see if he can actually hold the melody for 10 minutes. If he turns it into a spreadsheet by Act 2, we stick with Flash.
Fair enough. Although, if the toaster starts singing about market volatility and mixture of experts architecture, I am pulling the plug. What do you all think? Is Bernard the future of my weird prompts, or is he just a very convincing calculator? Let us know.
We will see if the conductor can actually lead the orchestra. Until next time.
Stay weird, everyone.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my weird prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My weird prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weirding.